All right, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix, and it is another edition of the Sunday Night Astro Live. And looks like we have a robust crowd of about 60 people here. Welcome to the show, and I hope everybody's had a wonderful weekend. And we've had a bit of a respite from the heat here, which has been welcome. But I think we're on our way back here with more hot stuff on the way. So, yeah, this is what we do. We get together on Sunday night and we talk some astrology for a couple hours. And I was kind of busy putting the show together tonight, and also working on the event, which is coming up. Somebody posted that we are 100 days away, and I just spoke to some of the participants that are going to be at the event in October here in the Hill Country. That's going to, I mean, officially we start on the 13th of October. That day is when we will have our first day. Now, people do arrive a lot of time. A lot of the time the day before, the day prior, so it would be the 12th, and that's a Thursday, and then they leave on. We pack out on Monday, and for those of you that are not familiar with this is going to be our 5th year of getting together in the Hill Country, and our good friend Ryan, the introspective woodworker, basically called me on it one day because I kept saying, this was way back when I was doing just the podcast stuff. Yeah, it'd be really great for all of us to get together one of these days. And so one day I was back in Pennsylvania at Solutions, which is a great bookstore and gem shop and community space back in Newtown, Ohio. I'm sorry, Pennsylvania. I don't know why Ohio in my brain, but he was there one day and he'd been listening to the show for a while. He said, "Yeah, man, that sounds like a great idea. If you did it, I would definitely show up." And so I did it, and then he didn't show up. But he's been to every single event that we've had ever since. So I really want to thank Ryan for getting me to commit. You know, when you say something to somebody in person like this, okay, yeah, I'll do it. Like now, all of a sudden, you're on the hook for it, right? And it's very hard to let people down once you agree to something. Every now and then, it happens, right? Like there could be circumstances that are beyond your control at times where maybe you have to say no or you have to change plans, but that was not one of them. So this will be our 5th year, and it's going to be on the eclipse. I mean, literally, the eclipse will be running right through the Hill Country, and it will be the second of 3 major eclipses here in the United States. Of course, the first took place in 2017, and that was on August 21st. And it was very early on in the Trump administration. Everybody knows that was really the first great American eclipse. And the thing that always blows my mind about that eclipse is that it started in the 33rd state, which is Oregon, and then it went like this across the country, and it ended on the 33rd parallel. So, I mean, sometimes you just can't make this shit up, right? So this eclipse is also going to start in Oregon, and right when it's going to hit sort of the middle part of the country, it's going to come right down and go right through the Hill Country. So that's what we're going to see. We're going to see that sun just come right over the cross of the Hill Country and then come right down. It's going to be wild, right? It's going to be a wild event, and everything is sold out here. I mean, it is entirely sold out, except for the rooms that we have that are available that we've set aside at the hotel. And I'm assuming that by the end of this week, those will be gone. So we're going to have millions of people here, which is crazy, right? I mean, even now I could go to, like, they have this pretty famous hardware store in Kerrville called Gibson's, and they're actually already selling the glasses that you can wear for the eclipse. I mean, they're on sale right now, right? And then in April of next year, it's the same place, right here in the hill country in April, coming up from Mexico and then going north and then cutting right. So this is going to be a really big part. This area is going to be a really big part of this eclipse cycle. So we're gonna put our big boy and big girl pants on, and we're gonna get together and we're gonna hang out during this eclipse. So that it officially starts on August 13th, which is also Friday the 13th, which is the Friday the 13th that the Knights Templar were slaughtered in the south of France by Pope Innocent. So it's a pretty interesting day, and we are tempting the fates. But sometimes you got to go big or go home, and that's what we're going to be doing this year. So I'll give you a kind of a brief breakdown of what we're going to do. Of course, on Friday we always have the Friday Farcast live from the event, which was one of my favorite things to do. And that's just on Friday for us there. And for you, Friday morning, we got something special planned that I can't talk about, but it's going to be our kind of pre-eclipse event. And then Friday afternoon, we'll have a get together and a mixer, and everybody gets to meet each other and get to know each other more. And then Saturday, we're going to have the great Shauna Home with us. And I think Shauna is amazing. If you don't know who she is, she's an author. She's written 3 books, The Mushroom's Apprentice, and all kinds of stuff, right? This amazing poetry. And Shauna is an Aries. So, she's, there's going to be an Aries moon, of course, with the eclipse and the node shifting and everything. So she's going to be our Aries representative. She's going to be our black moon, or actually a part of the black sun. And the great thing about Shauna is how she has really channeled the kind of the Aries power to will in her life. And she's going to talk about that. And just a remarkable journey from when I first knew Shauna. Man, I had her on my show for the first time, I think in maybe 2011. So I've known Shauna for going on 12 years now, and this is going to be the first time we've ever met. But we talk fairly frequently. We've been on each other's shows, and there was a period where she was having a very rough go of it and not living in a place that she really wanted to live in, and so she had a vision about where and how she wanted to live. And within not too long of a period of time, she was able to make that happen. And it wasn't through magical incantations and doing certain things at certain times of the year, although there could be some of that, right? Because Shauna is very aware of these cycles, but it really has to do with intentionality, right? And she's going to talk about that, and her journey to essentially manifesting her her escape plan, really. Not just an escape plan, but one that was very elevated, and it's taking her to another place in her life. So we always want to learn from people who have done things versus people that speculate and talk about things in theory. So Shauna is not theoretical. She's the real deal, and she's going to spend a fair amount of time talking about that and how that impacted her life and how we can actually learn something from a process that's very, very similar. So I'm looking forward to that. Last year, I was more of an MC, which I love doing. But this year, I'll also be doing a presentation on the eclipses and what happens after the eclipses, because that's really the big, that is the big burrito, right? Is what happens next. So I'm going to do a presentation. I'm going to save a lot of the information that normally I would bring here to this broadcast, but I'm going to save it until then. So it'll be Shauna and myself on Saturday, and then my good buddy Mark S. is going to be with us, and Mark has cruelty-free cartoons, and we're going to have such a good time on Saturday night. And Mark is going to be doing his cruelty-free cartoons for everybody that's there, right? So some of you have seen Mark on the show. Some of you might know who Mark is. And so he's going to be there, and everybody's going to get to have their, I guess you would call it, spirit caricature as part of the night, part of the proceedings. So you'll get to walk away with something really, really cool, and it's a very elevated experience. Now, of course, we did karaoke last year, and that was on Sunday night. So we're going to move it to Saturday night. So we're going to have this party going on Saturday night. So we'll be doing karaoke and some DJing, and Mark will be in there, and he'll be doing the sort of the live caricature stuff. And so it's going to be a blast. We're going to have a great time on Saturday night. And on Sunday, it's going to be kind of a health related day. And we'll have some speakers from our community. Our good friend Leela Marie will be there, and she'll do a presentation on tremor release therapy. There's a really good friend of Shauna's who has one of these amazing devices called an oscillator. And she's going to bring the oscillator to the event, and she's going to do a demonstration on the oscillator. So we'll see that on Sunday. And then, of course, our friend Darlena will bring us a little dose of human design on Sunday. So Sunday is going to be kind of a health related day, and health and healing related day. And then Sunday night, I think we're just going to kick it and maybe hang out by the pool. They got a really nice pool there. And I would say, how many meals are included? We've got Friday night, our dinner on Friday night, and then we have Saturday night dinner, and then we have Sunday brunch, and then Sunday night dinner. And so you're getting 4 meals. You also get snacks throughout the day, and they're good snacks. They're not shitty snacks. They're like high quality protein bars. What else do we have? We have filtered water for everybody. We have organic apples. So, you can eat light throughout the day. If you wanted to get a breakfast there, a lot of people meet at the cafe at the hotel for breakfast, and it's reasonable. I think they have a buffet on the weekends, and I think on Friday you can order off the menu. So there's all that. Plus, there's the hill country, and if you want to have an extended stay here in Texas, in this part of the world at that time of the year, there's so much to do. The weather is awesome. Right by the event, we have the Guadalupe River, and it is a wonderful river. You can do kayaking on it. So the Guadalupe is it's really a kind of essential part of Kerrville. And if you're into wine tasting and you want to play that game while you're here, it's kind of harvest season. Every time I drive down the highway, there's a new fucking winery. Okay. And if it's not a winery, it's a distillery. So if you have any interest in that world, and I got to say, some of the wines are actually pretty good. But there's a winery down the street from where I live called Hilme, which is quite excellent. And some of them actually grow their own grapes, believe it or not, and actually make their own wine. Not all of them do, though. They just have to have grapes growing there, which allows them to sell the wine on the premises, and they get an ag exemption for that. Actually, a lot of the wineries here, because a lot of them are new, they don't have mature grapes, but a lot of them get their grapes from West Texas. That's really the kind of the heartland of viticulture here in Texas. So the grapes will come from West Texas, and they'll either be fermented there or they'll be barrel fermented here in one of the wineries in the Hill Country. So it's not as if you aren't getting Texas wine. You are. You're just getting it from another part of Texas. And one of the reasons why that part of Texas happens to produce so much wine is because the climate and the temperature is a bit more ideal in some ways than this area because it's more of a bit of a desert climb, and so the nights get cooler there. And with grapes, you want really very warm to hot daytime temperatures, and then you want that temperature to drop off at night. So you are getting sort of the intense contrast, and the you get the the little tiny fruit, little tiny grape, which is stressed with all kinds of interesting flavor. And so then they bring it here, but there are some places here that have their own grapes. It's the wineries that have been around for a while. So if you're into that, right, you can do that here. You can make that a part of your trip, or if you wanted to hang out in Austin, it's another option. Now, in terms of flights, San Antonio is closer than Austin to Kerrville. It's about 50 minutes, and some people carpool. We'll set up. Last year, I set up a Telegram page, and I think it's still there. So I'll include that when I send the email out, and you can communicate with people through the Telegram page, and you can set up rides and all kinds of stuff, right? And as far as the cost goes, it'll probably be pretty similar to last year. I think we were somewhere around the $700 range for the entire weekend, and that includes all your meals and activities and stuff that we have planned for you. So, and then you get to hang out with all the people of Chattaria, and it's really a buzz, I have to say. And with the eclipse, I have no idea, where this thing is going to go, but it should be really powerful. And we'll be dealing with Aries and Libra, and this dance between the individual and the other, which is where we're headed. And we're going to talk about that tonight as it relates to the movie that we saw over the weekend, which is The Sound of Freedom, which is absolutely just crushing it at the box office now. It's lapping Indiana Jones. And there's a reason why it's lapping it. It's because it's actually a very real subject played by real people without any kind of time travel tricks or any agenda. And it's not a perfect movie, okay? But for what it's doing and what it represents, I'm not sure you can make it much better, honestly. When you're dealing with something like child trafficking, you're going in with a subject, right? You're going in with subject matter, and so it's not as if you're dealing with some kind of organic process, right? And they're kind of going off the script of a story by a guy by the name of Tim Ballard. We're going to talk a little bit about him tonight. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because, frankly, I don't have any astrological information on Tim Ballard. That's a bit of a mystery. All I know is he was born sometime during the 1970s. But this is what the movie is based on, and it took quite a while for the movie to get made. It got made and got shelved. I think there was something happened with the parent company, Angel Video, and now they're Angel Studios. That's a whole other story that goes along with it. One of the other things that I think will need to be mentioned is that Tim Ballard is a Mormon. And I believe Angel Studios is also run by a group of Mormons out of Provo, Utah. And I'm not saying this to take anything away from the movie, right? But the Mormons have their own weird history with children, and there, of course, there are breakaway people and breakaway sects and breakaway groups that are part of just about any group. Like there are people who don't agree with Catholicism as it's being currently practiced. Jim Caviziel being one of them, no doubt. Mel Gibson being another. There are people that don't agree with how certain types of Judaism are being practiced, or Islam for that matter. I mean, there are Muslims who see what's going on in Europe and they're just like, no, this is not how we do it, right? This is not what our prophet, told us or taught us or preached to us, right? It's a whole different sect. It's a whole different kind of extremist version of the so-called original teachings, right? So even though somebody may be affiliated, we had Asia on our show a couple of weeks ago, actually probably a couple of months ago, and we got into this with her um, basically disconnection from the Mormon Church and kind of what happened in her world. So just because there are certain groups behind certain things, it doesn't automatically mean that they're running cover. So, but it's always good to take note, right? And look, everybody and everything in this universe is self-interested. Okay, just keep that in mind. We are all self. The only time our self-interest is um, completely erased is when we have to do something that's a sacrifice, and a lot of those times those sacrifices happen in real time. Like we don't have a chance to think about them. It just happened. Like the idea that a human would risk their life for a total stranger, that is not programmed into the self-interest category, and it does happen, right? So there are exceptions even to the self-interest rule, but by and large, most of us have some degree of self-interest, right? It just depends on how much of that we have inside of ourselves and what offsets the self-interest. If you have other things that offset it and it's a healthy self-interest, there's nothing wrong with it. It's part of being human. And more people should learn it at that level, because when they don't learn it, it becomes out of balance and it becomes self-obsessed. And that's a large part of the so-called culture we're living in, right? The selfie culture. It's taking self-interest to a whole nother level. It's being metastasized, and then this self, the small less, winds up becoming the deity that each and every person worships in their own life. So we're going to look at Caviezel's chart. It's a very interesting chart. I also have a little bit of a surprise on that chart, which I'm not going to talk about right now because I want to get into it when we do talk about it. I also pulled a chart for when they released Sound of Freedom, and that was on the 4th of July. So we're only 5 days into this thing, and I believe it's already up around $50 million in total sales at the gate. And one of the things that Angel Studios does is a lot of their stuff is crowdfunded, which I found out. And I thought that was really interesting, right? So a lot of the films that they've done in the past, people have actually contributed to those movies to help them get made. And one of the things that they do at the end is that they actually put up a QR code, and it allows you to buy a ticket to the movie and pass it along to somebody else. It's their paid forward program. So it must be working. And I've been going through some feeds on Twitter, and there are people that are going back for the second and third time, right? So not only are they getting people that are going once, but now they're going twice and three times. And that's when movies have legs, right? That's when they have legs. And Caviezel, if this movie continues this trend, which I think it will, if it continues in this trend, he will have starred in two enormously grossing box office ventures. The other, of course, being The Passion. And according to Caviezel and Mel Gibson, they're working on The Passion, The Resurrection. So keep that in mind. We'll get into the chart of the moment tonight. And what else do we have kind of on the books? Oh, Victoria Nuland has basically said that World War III is going to start on June 11th. That's just 2 days from now. So I'm going to, later on the show, I'm going to play you a clip from an Indian TV program. And this clip has been kind of scrubbed from the internet. And it has to do with this meeting that's taking place with NATO, and that's going to be happening on July 11th. And so we're going to look at that chart. And does July 11th? It's a 7-Eleven day. And we know that there was a 7-Eleven event in England. It was a big one. And it was one of those subway bombing, chasing down the bad guy kind of events, right? And not completely above board. Something a little false flaggy about the whole thing. So that's kind of what we're going to cover tonight. I think we'll probably go for maybe 2 hours tonight since we're starting a little bit late. But some interesting things to look at astrologically. All right, we got Peachy in the house. What's going on, Peachy? Where's your boyfriend? She's hunting around for her outside beau. All right, let's see who we have here. I'm just going to go to the top, cruise through, and do a few meet and greets. Let's see who we have. We got to go all the way to the top. Lots of people. All right, LMM, the aforementioned LMM. She'll be with us during the eclipse. Liddy Lou, she's going to be here too. And so will the lovely and talented one. That's Joan S. sitting right there. We had rain this morning. Good. Excellent. We have a well. I use a sprinkler on the roof during the hottest part of the day. Oh, I like that. Good idea. You know, she doesn't really show up here on Sunday nights, but Tamara, who has been at the event and does show up on 15 minutes, she lives in one of those houses that's kind of subterranean, right? It's kind of built into a hill, and her roof is made out of earth, and she's got plants on the top. So it definitely keeps her cool in the summer and warm in the wintertime. Let's see, who else do we have? Benito, my man, what's going on? Good to see you. It looks like we've got a Scoob sighting in the house too. What's going on, Scoobs? Kelly B's here. Basic schedule. Yes, I do. Yes. We have basically ironed everything out today. So keep your eyes on your email. Krista Royce from Cincinnati. I'm planning. Hey, Krista, cool. Glad you're coming. From Cincinnati. Remember I was talking about Cincinnati last week? We got somebody from Cincinnati coming on down. If I'm not going to Cincinnati, Cincinnati is coming here. Let's see. Here we go. Who else do we have? Let's see. There's my man Steve. If you haven't met Thor at the door, he is literally Thor at the door. He is the hammer, the hair. It's there. It's all real, right? We're not hyping him. Pengreedy's here. What's going on, Pengreedy? Good to see you. Okay, we got some Sounds of Freedom chat in the text. The interviews are Diane Evans. Hi, Diane. Beautiful Sunday here in Northern California. Great to be on with y'all. Good. Good to see you, Diane. Let's see. Who else do we have? Oh, did I say hi to Susie Gemini? I should say hi twice. Susie Gemini. Meow Meow's here. What's going on, Meow Meow? There's my man, Ryan. KZ Gypsy Muse. Buenos. Who else do we have? Erica E. Checking in with us. What's going on, Double E? The Magic Cat is here. By the way, August is Cat Month. Don't forget it. Hashtag it. Has anybody joined Threads? It's so weird. 70 million people have joined Threads. Do you really believe that? I think it's a bunch of shit. I think they're lucky of 7 million. Although, I don't know. Maybe so many people have been turned off by Musk. People don't know. People don't know what a real racist or a real Nazi sounds like. They don't know. They have no clue. they have these comic book ideas of what they should look or sound like. And if they really knew, um, they'd be hanging out at the Democratic convention. No, I'm just kidding. Sort of. Let's see. Prosperity Now is here. Sony, the classy one. What's going on, Sony? We got an all-star crew here tonight. Magical Catacorn, checking in from the northern parts of Texas, up near Bonito country, actually. Grateful Dogs, Old World Florida, and Head to Head. Oh, I know. It's me and my astrological son pulling at each other. Yeah. I thought about that. It's like, yeah, we're going off on each other on Sunday nights. And I thought to myself, should I go earlier than his stream? And I thought, you know what? That would be a sign of weakness. Right? That would be a sign of weakness. It's like, fuck it, Let's go mano y mano. Let's go mano y mano, Narco. You can always watch him, I guess, in the record mode. Glemma Spank, what's happening, Glemma? Good to see you. Let's see. Sue's here. Hi, Sue. Derek Reagan Walls. What's going on, Derek Reagan Walls? There she is, Lynette Jardine, the queen of the highways in the Pacific Northwest. We'll call her Mad Maxine. Let's see, who else do we have? Woman who runs with wolves. How about checking in with Chatlandia and doing a Q&A at the end of the show? We'll have to check in at the beginning. Q&A I'll do at the end. I'll be happy to do that. Peter Biome, what's going on, Peter? Let's see. Third eye activated. Marge, how you doing, Marge? Misty's here. Let's see. I think I said hi to Grateful Dogs. There's my man, Mark S. Right there. This fella right there is going to be with us in October. Cruelty-free cartoons. If you're gonna show up at the event, total treat. Total treat. Shirley Losciavo, she's been down here. We've hung out with Shirley, the wonderful Shirley. I think it was last year, right, Shirley? Weren't you here last year? Let's see. Julianne Forster, what's going on, Julie? Love a Scorpio. We always love a Scorpio. Mr. Jim Caviziel is a Scorpio rising. Could you tell? I did my eclipse in Salem, Oregon in 2017. I'll be there in spirit. Okay. You can join us on the Farcast. Moniz Phoenix. Hello, Moniz. What's going on? Jamie, there's my man. He's been with us. Jamie was at the inaugural event. Susan Chappelle. Hey, Susan. Good to see you. There's my man, DJ Mike. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. User 13 is here. Marty R. Hi, Marty. What are the dates again? 13th is when we kick it off. A lot of people show up the 12th, and then we go the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th, and people leave on the 15th, which is Monday. There you go. Liddy Lou's got the event dates there. Yeah, so a lot of people come in on Thursday, so you can just jump right in on Friday. Steve Letro's here. Our garden food is a jungle. Man, it's Letro's world, and we're just living in it. Do I think it is safe to travel on the 22nd through the 6th of August going to UK? Yeah, sure. Yeah, England is one of those places that I think is, look, England's got its problems, don't get me wrong, but I think they're kind of outside of the high strange of Europe. We talked about that last week. That's going to be amazing. Y'all don't understand. The Hill Country is great. It's one of the few places I would live in Texas, actually. Don't get me wrong. I've been to Houston. I love the people. I love the food. I've been to Dallas, but this is one of the few places here I would live. I'm currently booked from the 12th through the 16th, but we'll stay longer. Look at that. So if you need some tremor release, Leela will be here. I was vaccinated back in 2021 so I could see my mom in the nursing home. Will I be a pariah? Will you all avoid me? No. But thank you for full disclosure. look, we've all been around vaccinated people, right? Like the cat is kind of out of the bag. So it's good. It's good honesty. Eclipse energy is not good for energetic sensitives, elders, or children. No. Erica E., you're good. Come on down. Let's see. Anybody else? Ashante. What's going on, Ashante? Yeah, it's good to see you. Ashante Z. Edwards. Hey, Kevin Stick Evers, October 13th is your birthday. If you don't know, Kevin, William is the brother of Kevin Stick Evers, right? William Stick Evers, he's Kevin's brother. I'm putting Kevin, because Kevin is a Libra. So theoretically, he's kind of up the chart from William the Aries, just saying. Let's see. WC Ray, what's going on, Robin? My man, good to see you. Claire, I live in the wrong part of the world, or maybe just for that weekend, or who knows? Wherever you are is the right place. Mary Lee, having some lemon pasta for dinner. Sounds delicious. I have to create the link, Erica. It'll be on robertphoenix.com. It's really a sign-up link, so I'll have that. I'll work on that tonight. DJ Dre, my computer just had a meltdown. What the astrology? I don't know. Do you know Jim Caviziel, when he was playing Jesus, he got struck by lightning? Did you know that? He got hit by a lightning bolt in his shoulder, and it fucked up his shoulder. Man, that's got to be a little prophetic there. Let's see. Who else do we have? Into the Hills. Book a room. Yep, get a room. Coach Friday, I can tell you for sure YouTube is suppressing your numbers and not. So I had no idea you existed until I saw you on Frank's show. Yeah, I've been doing this since 2010. It's funny. I went back and I listened to a really old show, and it was one of those shows where I was doing live readings for people. I was back in the Blog Talk Radio days. Let's see. Don't let their thanks, Peter. A lot of people were really supportive, and I didn't want to make Friday's show about that, but it was just so happened that I went through like that weird kind of interaction, and then I just was talking about it, and it was really about somebody who claimed that they weren't getting any traction from me or people that listened to me, right? Like, my cult, and that'd be a good name for something, Mike Holt, right? Mike Holt. Anyway, and it was really more about that, and it was more about how there was a time when I was, not like feeling it. I wasn't feeling it like that I was getting anywhere with any of it. And then it was all about coming to terms with that, and coming to terms with being okay with what we're doing, and numbers, views, whatever, right? It's just like coming to terms with it. And every now and then I'm human, and every now and then I'll look at something and I'll go, well, shit, I can do better than that. Or, why is this person getting, X amount of views? And then I've been doing it enough for a while, so it doesn't really affect me or phase me like the way it used to. And, the algorithm is that if I'm, doing work and I'm having a healthy practice and helping people, that's where it is for me, right? Like, and I'm doing those things, so I'm okay with it. But I didn't want Friday's show to be about that. I really wanted it to be about Mark and Jillian, and we'll do that. We'll kind of do a bit of a recap, and I'll put the link to their Give, Send, Go also up here at the end of the show. And he was a half an hour. I was half an hour into kind of going through that when Mark jumped on, and we changed, we changed tracks. So anyway, I didn't want it to be about that. And thank you for the people who did leave the supportive comments. And I wasn't on the edge of a bridge looking to jump off. Okay. It wasn't really like that, but there have been times in the past where I've actually gone through that kind of like, why the fuck am I doing this? Right? I think we all do though, really. Like, why the fuck am I doing this? There are times, and I know a lot of you are healing practitioners, and sometimes you really struggle with it. Like, why am I doing this? Why do I help people and give them all the tools they need, and then they're back 3 months later, right? Like, why am I doing this? Or, you might have really, really good tools, and somebody may have better marketing than you do. And you ask yourself, well, why am I doing this? Right. Or it doesn't even have to be like that. It could just be your job or your gig. And step back and go, why am I doing this? I'm not getting anything out of it. And sometimes I think that's a really important question to ask. And other times it's like, oh yeah, I know why I'm doing this. And so, somebody left me a comment that's stuck in my head ever since I read it on Friday. It was a really good comment. And he said, I believe it's a he. He said, I'm glad fame has been stingy with you. And I thought to myself, that is a really great comment. And I agree. I agree, because if I had, had a lot of like uber popularity, I think I would have been an insufferable asshole, honestly. And so over time, when you do this for as long as I mean, really, I've been doing this now for like 13 years. My first Sunday night show was in 2010. My second guest was Jay Whitener. And, you do it over a period of time. And I think you come to appreciate it, right? It's kind of like somebody who, is out on the tour circuit or club circuit, and they just continue to do it, and they do it for a particular reason. And who knows if they started playing 40,000 seat theaters, 50,000 seat theaters, they turn out like Axl Rose. And so I thought that was a great comment, and I agree with that. It's a really great comment. All right, so why don't we get into the show? And I will answer your questions at the end if you have any whatsoever. So why don't we look at what's happening now astrologically? Let's look at that. We'll do the chart of the moment. Here we go. And I have a chart all rigged up and ready to go right there, if you can see it. And I think I can make it even a little bit bigger. Let's do it a little bit bigger. There we go. So that was at 7 p.m. tonight, and now we're 7:44. So I think we're getting close to Cap Rise. We started with Sag on the ascendant at 25. So where are we? Where the heck are we? July 9th, 2023. Where's our friend the moon? Aries. We're going to talk about Aries tonight. We're going to talk about Aries, and we're going to talk about blood, and we're going to talk about things like sacrifice, and even to some extent adrenochrome, which of course is blood, right? So I think it is appropriate that we are being guided by the Aries moon tonight. And we're coming in with a conjunction with Chiron, which we'll also dive into a bit. The whole Aries cycle is about to be sprung upon us. We got the true node now at 0 Taurus, just getting ready to move in to the sign of Aries, and the beginning of the nodal cycle. So for all of you who are at home and want to know when that is, I'm happy to tell you. So the nodes flip on the 18th of July. So we're talking 9 days from today. So we've got another Sunday night show, and then I guess it'll be on let's see, on that Monday, right? Nodal shift the 18th. So 7 be the 16th, Monday the 17th, Tuesday the 18th, Wednesday the 19th. Next Wednesday. That's when the nodes flip. And they're kind of a big deal with astrology. They're kind of a big deal. Stephen Forrest and the whole evolutionary school of astrologers have essentially made a practice, an astrological practice, vis-a-vis the nodes, and that also takes into account, like, where nodes are transiting through your chart, where they are in terms of your progress chart, et cetera, et cetera. Stephen Forrest is not big on Chiron, though, which I think is interesting and missing out on a ton of information with Chiron. I think for me, Chiron is really one of the big players in astrology. With the nodes, I tell you, we hung out with Ricky Williams one night. Do you guys know who Ricky Williams is? He used to play for the University of Texas Longhorns. Okay, so let me. It's so weird. It is really weird how astrology works sometimes. So Ricky Williams, let me get out of this for a second, because I got to show you now. Now that's in my head, I got to show you. It was such a bizarre kind of stunt meme when he was drafted by the New Orleans Saints. Let me see if I can find it. Ricky Williams. Yeah, right here. Like, this is one of the most bizarre. I remember when this came out. It really, it kind of wigged me out, actually. And there's a nodal story here. So don't get me wrong, right? We're gonna get into an astrological conversation around this. So it's not like let me see if I can find a good one. Good photos. It's a good photo. Dennis Rodman did the same thing. Hold on 1 second here. I just want a really good image so I can pop it up here and you guys can see it. Oh, please. Okay, so this was so bizarre. All right, this will work. Let me throw this up there. Some of you guys are probably all over it already, but whoops, that's not what I want. Yeah, so this is Ricky Williams here, and this is Mike Ditka, and at that time, Ditka was the coach of the New Orleans Saints, and he had traded every single draft pick in that draft, so he could move up to the first pick in the draft, so he could take Ricky Williams, who was the Heisman Trophy winner out of the University of Texas. Now, what's really interesting about Ricky from an astrological perspective is that Ricky has his South Node in Aries. And guess what else he has? He has a Mars-Venus conjunction in Aries. Can you see it? Can you see the fucking Mars-Venus conjunction? I mean, it's right there. And so Ricky, we hung out with him. Now, this is much later on. This is when he was just graduated from college, just entered the draft. And Ricky became an astrologer. So he studied with Stephen Forrest and talked about a lot of things that happened to him. Like, there was this one time where Saturn was crossing his midheaven, which is in Cancer, and he was playing for the Ravens, and they had a big rainstorm, and he didn't want to play. He hadn't played in a while. He was just coming back, and he said, "No, hey, look, I'm not really in shape. I'm not ready to go." And that South Node in Aries with Mars in Aries kind of forced him into it. So we had Saturn crossing his midheaven and then squaring off against uh, his own. No, it was either Saturn or Mars. I apologize, but it was raining and it was in Baltimore, and I actually remember the game. I was watching the game, and he fucked up his hamstring, and he had to sit out for the rest of the season, like a pretty significant hamstring injury. And so he looked at that astrologically and was able to go back and see what was going on that very day when he wasn't listening to himself and was pushing, trying to push through it. And with Cancer on the midheaven, he's dealing with water and emotion and feeling and not listening to that inner voice, right? He totally got it. But he is a devotee of Stephen Forrest, so the nodes are really important, right? So he's got this South Node in Aries, and in order to play that out, he became a football player. And Ricky was really, really good, really, really good football player. And then he sat out because he was smoking too much weed, and he was smoking weed to relax, and he was banned by the NFL. Went up to Canada because you could smoke weed in Canada and play. And then he dropped out and he studied Chinese medicine. He studied Ayurvedic medicine. He studied yoga. Ricky's a really interesting character. Then he comes back to the NFL and he was really, really good, right? So what he did is he changed his name and he took his wife's last name, and then he got rid of Ricky and is using his middle name for his first name now. And why did he do it? Because he wanted to be more a part of his true node. Like, okay, well, if this is what you're supposed to do with astrology, then I'm going to move away from Mars and I'm going to move towards Venus and I'm going to take on my wife's last name. And I'm going to get rid of Ricky. He's no longer Ricky Williams anymore. Right. But even there, like, it's more complicated because of the Mars Venus conjunction. And you can see the Mars Venus conjunction here. And I think Ricky was really kind of acting out something astrological, even though he probably didn't know it at the time. Later on, I think he probably figured some of this out. He's a Gemini, by the way. So Ricky's also a Gemini. And, you can see some of the Gemini stuff going on in there as well. So he again, I'm just bringing it up because he's such an adherent to Stephen Forrest's system that he decided that, he was just going to go all the way and go full true node right into Libra. I don't know if I can go that far. Not sure I can go that far. I would have to wander the countryside with a little rucksack, in an alms bowl if I was going to do that. Frankly, I'd rather do it for my living room. Anyway, cool guy. Very cool guy. Let's get back to the chart in a moment because these nodes are about to flip. And it's a big deal when they do. Right? So let's get back here. I just had to take you on that weird little journey. Weird, right? But I know he gets it. I know. I didn't talk to him about it. I talked to him about some other stuff. I wanted to get him on my show, and I sent him an email, and I don't think I heard anything back. I'm probably a little too political for Ricky, although I do like him. So yeah, there we go. 0 Taurus. It's almost like the calm before the storm. Doesn't it feel that way? And I know he's like, what calm before the storm? It's fucking nuts out there. Wait till these suckers move. And we get that true node in Aries and that South node moves into Libra. And, the need for people are going to be scrambling around for balance. And this whole, I'll tell you what else was really interesting. I was watching Tim Pool, and they were talking about the movie Sound of Freedom, and Ian. You know who Ian is? Ian Crossan. He's probably one of the goofiest, clueless, smart guys I've ever met. Like, I know that guy's fucking smart, right? But there's another part of him that's kind of clueless and goofy. And he was talking about, I'm not sure I want to go because I think if I went, I'd want to go out and, go kill some pedophiles afterwards. Okay. True node moving into Aries. What have I been talking about? I've been talking about the vigilante, right? The vigilante, Death Wish, Charles Bronson, Paul Kersey. This is where we are moving into an instinctual period, for better or worse, right? Libra, we're always weighing the options out. It's like, well, should I do this? Should I do this? What's going to happen if I do this? That's when the nodes move into Aries, that's just out the window. Now, keep in mind that a lot of this started, what we've gone through. A lot of this started in 2020 when we had that extended Mars cycle in Aries. You guys remember that, right? Summer of Floyd, which they're now calling the Summer of Love, which is ridiculous. And I know they're being ironic, but it all started there, right? And now with the true node moving into Aries, what does the true node do? It moves backwards, right? It actually moves clockwise. So I see the true node in Aries as turning the clock back and making it so that the aggression that we experienced in 2020, which was pointed really in one direction, that direction's moving in the other direction now. I was just watching a clip from the country of Georgia, not the state of Georgia, and they had a really large pride rally, or at least they hoped it would be large, and then the locals came in and they shut it down. I mean, they just shut it down. It's like, no, this is not happening here. And I think we've already seen signs of it, and we're going to see more of it. And you know, it feels to me like when I see we're here, we're queer, and we're coming for your kids, which was a big song protest deal that happened in New York. When I see something like that, and I see these TikTokers, and they're basically saying that you're going to respect us no matter what, I don't think they know what's coming, right? I really don't think they know what's coming. I believe that they believe that they're a protected class, right? They believe that they're as protected as the $900 shoplifter in Walgreens. I'm sorry, that's probably not going to be the case. And I'm not saying this as a threat. Please understand this. I'm saying this from an astrological perspective, that you're going to see a bunch of people that are just over it, right? They're over it, and they are not going to um, be shat on anymore. And I think it's going to be across the board. And of course, when that happens, you're going to see other groups that are going to be willing to exploit them and exploit their frustration and exploit their resentment and exploit the fact that they have been um, basically at the heel of a sociological boot since roughly, like, I would say 2018. We'll go halfway through Trump, and there's a lot of frustration, a lot of frustration. You've got post Jan 6 frustration. You've got post lockdown frustration. You've got post double jab frustration. You've got you name it frustration. It's there. And when the true no goes into Aries, there's no deliberation, right? The deliberation goes out the window. And that's the South Node in Libra. It's the deliberation just goes. People are not weighing and balancing, their actions. And in some cases, it may be a good thing. In other cases, it may not be a good thing because there can be, guess what, with the South Node in Libra, legal repercussions, right? The scales of justice. So we're in a very tricky area. Now, that true node, it's going to take it a while to reach Chiron, but that's going to be a critical time. Very, very critical time. Right now, what we're going to see is eventually this true node is going to go into like 29, 28 Aries, and that sun, which is at 17 Cancer, will eventually, in the latter degrees of Leo, catch up with the true node. And that's going to be a very interesting time. I think, again, astrology is agnostic, okay? It is an agnostic function of the universe. So you could have very, very elite bloodline, royal family members or personas during a phase like that and firmly believe from the center of their black little hearts that they're doing exactly the right thing, right? That they're the ones that have been given royal decree over the rest of the planet, the rest of humanity for centuries. And with that true node in Aries, in their hearts and their minds, they could move forward, right? I mean, this thing cuts both ways. Now, Aries to me is also in some ways, the common man, it's the soldier, it's the pawn on the chessboard. So it goes the other direction as well. So you have the common person or the common man believing in their heroic status or their heroic nature or their mythopoetic expression. So now we're really into Joseph Campbell territory, right? Now we're into the hero's journey. And no matter what you think about Tim Ballard or Jim Caviziel, that is what we're seeing on the screen right now. We are seeing an expression of the hero's journey. And there's something about watching a movie in a movie theater versus in the the confines of your home. And the confines of your home are fine, but in a movie theater, you're experiencing emotion together, right? Like you're not just feeling what you're feeling what other people are feeling in the room. So it's amplified. It's really amplified. And we had a little bet at the end of the movie. And I said, what do you think? Round of applause or not? And guess what happened? It was quiet, and the round of applause started with one clap. One clap. And then it spread, and then there was a round of applause. So there was a round. So it only starts with one clap. It only starts with one person. And we, again, Tim Ballard, I don't know. All I know about Tim Ballard is what I've read. He's got 9 kids. This is what the story's based on. He was in the Clinton administration at some point, right? So there's perhaps some little weirdo backstory with Tim Ballard, just to be, completely upfront, right? I'm not here to lionize Tim Ballard. Jim Caviziel, when he was young, I think he made some weird choices and some of this shit, right? And he's talked about it. All of that aside, it is the hero's journey. And the new Harrison Ford movie, which is going in the other direction, is more like the heroine's journey and the hero's disaster. So this is really a very interesting time. And I think a movie like this, again, we're going to look at some of the charts here, and it's going to continue to play, right? Like I swear, you're going to have people going to this movie 2, 3, 4 times. And I can see this movie playing well into August. Okay. Well into August. And the mainstream media is already trying to do a hatchet job in the movie. Oh, it's all QAnon bullshit. Look, people understand that, first of all, children are abducted, stolen. It's been going on for a very long time, right? It's really funny. I was looking at the release of Pinocchio and Peter Pan, right? It's like, when were those two movies released? Well, they were released fairly close in terms of the chronology year wise, but they were both released in February. Like, one was, I think, February 3rd, and the other might have been like February 6th or something like that. I thought to myself, this is a really interesting time to launch these two movies. And of course, with Pinocchio, there's a whole subtext with Pinocchio about, this lonely old cobbler who wanted a boy of his own, right? Geppetto. And then, of course, with Peter Pan, they go to they have the Lost Boys, right? And the Lost Boys have really been abducted by Captain Hook. So these are two movies with two themes in some ways that are connected. And even with Peter Pan, there's Tinkerbell, and I think there's another like spirit in Geppetto or Pinocchio. So you have these two kind of fairy spirits that are also anyway. They're both released in February, and I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? Disney chose Aquarius to release. Now, those could have been box office hits. You release them during the box office season, December, but they released them during Aquarius time. Anyway, it was just to me kind of a look at when movies are released. And Sound of Freedom was released on the 4th of July, right? So it's been in theaters for 5 days now, and I think they're at 50 million. So the movie has, and this is not at a bunch of theaters across the country, by the way, right? So the movie has grossed $10 million a day for 5 days, and it being launched on the 4th of July is meaningful, right? It's an American story. So when we get into kids, we get into Leo. We can't not talk about children in Leo. And so what do we have here? We have Pallas in Leo. We have Mars in Leo. We have Venus in Leo. We have Black Moon Lilith in Leo. And they were all there 5 days ago. And to me, Black Moon Lilith in Leo is really, in a lot of ways, a big part of this movie. I'm not going to spoil the movie for you, but there's a character in this movie who is a Black Moon Lilith character. She is this seductress, very attractive Latina who essentially spots kids and tells the kids and their parents that she's a talent scout, right? And she's going to take their kids to an audition. This is how this whole thing gets set up. And that to me is such a Black Moon Lilith character. Right. She's this dark mother. Don't worry. I'll take good care of them. And again, it's children, right? It's children. And the other thing too, that is interesting about this movie is that the two children in the movie, and again, I'm not telling you anything that's going to spoil the movie for you, but they do not have a mother, and they have a father who is, again, based on a true story, heartbroken, right? But no mother. And so now the Black Moon Lilith theme is kind of hanging in the background of the movie as well. It's like, where's the mother? Where did she go? Did she die? Did she run off? And was she abducted at some point in time? Was she a victim of some other kind of lifestyle choice, right? So it's just the father there. So this is very, very interesting. And so when we have Black Moon Lilith, we start dealing with children and the whole idea of, again, being maternal and protecting them. This is a big deal, right? And now we have Chiron coming in, and we have a trining Black Moon Lilith, and it's in Aries. And all of a sudden, people are really getting, quite motivated in a lot of ways. To how do we do this? How do we stem the tide? How do we deal, with trafficking? And this is very interesting, right? This movie is creating and generating a lot of astrology around it, and even the astrology of it's not just the movie; it's in the mix, right? It's totally in the mix, and we have, Venus and Mars here in conjunction, right? So it's both a masculine and a feminine operation. And I bet you, if you went to see, the weird thing about this movie is that in some ways, believe it or not, it's kind of a chick flick. Believe it or not, it is because women are into the story, right? They like women are into this idea that these poor children are just being snatched from their parents and put into the sex trade, which is you don't really see the graphic details of it, but some of the graphic nature of it is communicated at times, right? So women naturally have an inclination to want to protect children. And then you'll see just as many men there with this movie, right? With Mars, because it's a dude that is doing like it's not a fucking android, right? It's not Scarlett Johansson, right? It is a dude who is going in and kind of doing the right thing, right? So this is a total Mars Venus operation that's related to the movie. And again, they didn't sit back and go, oh, why don't we launch this? No, July 4th, I guarantee you was conscious. They were clearly conscious of that. They wanted this film to be associated with that day, whether or not they were diving into the astrological repercussions of that. They wanted it for that day. What they didn't know is that they would get Venus and Mars along for the ride, that this would be a movie that both men and women would want to go see because Jim Caviziel plays a bit of an action hero, right? Although the movie's a little light on action, but he does play one. And then, of course, the movie resolves itself. I'm not going to tell you it resolves itself, but it resolves itself, right? And so you have this sort of complete sort of union here of the masculine and the feminine. And Mars is right here at 29 degrees. It's going to go into Virgo. And guess who has Mars in Virgo? Yeah, Jim Caviziel. That's right. So we're going to look at his chart a little bit later on in the show. And then here's Pallas right now, conjuncting Mars. This is a really interesting energy. This is apart from the movie, right? Like this is energy where you should think about acting on your I don't want to use the word impulse. Impulse has such a negative connotation, right? Oh, you're being too impulsive. But you can't talk about Mars in that way without talking about acting in the moment, right? Acting in the moment. So we've got this conjunction here at 2929, the anaretic degree. And by the way, this was very close to the degree of the last eclipse that we had. The Great American Eclipse was at 28 degrees in Leo. So right now, this is on Trump's ascendant, this Mars. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see what goes on with Trump over the next 24 hours. But Pallas is all about pattern recognition, right? And now it's all coming in. Like here comes the moon. By the time you get up tomorrow morning, that moon will be probably right around 23 degrees or so, right? So now it's moving into a closer trine with Mars. I wouldn't say do anything stupid, but I also wouldn't discount your own intuition. Clearly would not discount your own intuition, right? And this is kind of the last chance at 29 degrees. It's very, very interesting. Now, I believe Mars will move ahead of Pallas. Pallas is a little bit slower. So we'll get Mars moving into Virgo. I think that goes at Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. And then it'll be Venus. Now, Venus doesn't quite catch up because it goes retrograde. And we talked about Venus retrograde last week. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a really interesting and very, very propitious time. Everything is also linked to Regulus, which regulates the entire drama in the cosmos and the night sky, right? So there's this very unusual sense of maybe a calm before the storm, right? Because at 29 degrees, there's no energy left. And at the same time, it's kind of at this axial point which everything kind of revolves around. So very interesting. Don't sleep on your hunches. Don't sleep on your hunches. If you feel like you got to move on something, right? Because again, there's really a pretty good chance that if you're doing it, it's not impulsive. Why? Because you've been thinking about it. You've been thinking about it. You've been pondering it. You've been wondering if it's the right time. Yeah. Yeah, this is the right time, right? These degrees right here are related to acting with authority, right? But we're also coming here towards the end of the clock. So what does this mean, right? Now, on the 11th, I think Mars is in Virgo, and that's Victoria Newland's clock when it comes to this whole idea of quote unquote World War III. Now, again, I'm going to play that clip later on. It comes from a news service out of India. It's kind of interesting, but man, this is a fascinating chart. Then we have Venus going retrograde. So one of the things that I would say is that whatever you do now with Venus going retrograde, it's a test in a lot of ways, like walking back your actions or walking back your agreements. And I'm not sure if that's going to be the right or the wrong thing to do for you. Only you would know, right? Only because this is a time right now. Like this is a time to act. So go to your phones, make a reservation at the end of the hills, and get one of our rooms. I think we got about 12 or 13 rooms left. A really interesting chart. Now we have Uranus. Now these planets are separating a bit from Uranus. Now, this would be the impulsivity with Uranus here at 22, and I think Uranus is about to go retrograde here pretty soon, right? And we've kind of hit the soft underbelly a little bit in the housing market. And I talked about this. We're in that place right now, right? And I've been watching it. I've been watching. It's crazy what the fuck happened to the market. If you go back and look at what houses were selling for 2018, so we're talking 4 years ago, right? So I've been looking at houses, and there's this one house I think that's selling for $430,000 in Kerrville, and in 2018 that house was sold for $180,000. Think about that. Just think about that, right? That was 2018, 5 years ago, and it's over double the price. Over double the price. It's nuts, right? But I've also been noticing that some of these houses have been on the market for a while. So again, we're in that kind of soft underbelly. And if you're sitting on the fence and you want to move on a property and you feel like this is your time, right? The other thing that we got going on here is this really wild yod with Pluto at 29 and Mars at 29 and Neptune at 27 also in the mix. It's weirdly prophetic. It's a strangely prophetic yod um, that resolves itself in action, right? But the action again, it is not agnostic. There are also other people who are in the mix, and when we get, just like I said, when we get into Leo, we're talking about these so-called quote unquote elite, right? And they're part of the odd too. They're completely part of the odd, and you have this Plutonian quincunx with Mars. It's like, what's coming, right? Like, what is coming? And then also with Neptune, it's like, what is coming as well? So there's, if I were to look at this from a phenomenal perspective, I would say that this has something to do with hydroelectricity, um, power dams, um, maybe even to some extent undersea cables, right? There's something that we're it's back here, right? We're talking blindside, and this I would keep my eye on those. What would you call? I would not industries, utilities. It's like, yeah, some of it maybe utilities, but yeah, we're talking about water, right? Water, power, and then the force and the violence. I think that is also here. It is really this in conjunct with Pluto. And when we get into a cycle, and look, there are people that do live in a trafficking psychodrama. Okay, there are people that do live in a trafficking psychodrama, and it's like a really, really huge part of their life. So I'm excluding some of these people, although I think their hearts are in the right place. But when you get a movie like this, and it really starts to do big business and opens people's eyes, and people are having a shared experience together, and they're seeing it multiple times. Now, they could try to direct that energy and say, oh, it's just QAnon, or, oh, all these people are just fascists, or they're having a fetish over these children. Look, you do that, you're treading on really, really thin ice, right? Really thin ice. Because when you get into the subject of children, we know that there is a sacred currency to children, and the left practice it just as well, right? When AOC was down at the border, she was doing the same damn thing. She was trafficking on the currency of children, the emotional currency of children, right? So they have to be very careful here with bad mouthing this movie. In fact, I think Rolling Stone is already starting to have some very hardcore repercussions with this. So if this is another iteration of people waking up, and they are waking up, what they do with it, that's a whole other story. By the way, if I was a registered sex offender, I would be very concerned. I would be very concerned because all that stuff is available online, right? You could go, and they have search tools for that. You can find out who the registered sex offenders are in your neighborhood. Believe it or not, they have to register, right? If I was one of those people, I'd be very concerned because, again, there's this effect that cinema has on people. That's an aside. But the real story is, it's like, okay, all right, we've got too many people kind of waking up here. We're going to need something to have a major distraction. And if there's an alignment that represents a major distraction, I think we're looking at one right here, right? We're looking at one with the Pluto quincunx to Mars, and the Neptune quincunx to Mars. It's like, oh, gee, who'd have thought? Who'd have thought that was going to happen? So this is a very, very interesting stellium here. And even though Black Moon Lilith is not that close, it's still part of the mix, right? Still very much a part of the mix. Man, oh man, we've just been here with the moon and Chiron, and there are going to be people that are going to be showing up to work tomorrow, sitting around the water cooler. I guess if they still do that, many of them talking about this movie, right? Many of them talking about the sound of freedom and the emotional connection here, and it's all just getting started. It's all just getting started, right? Saturn's gone retrograde in Pisces. And I wonder how that's going to work out for the Biden family and that little bag of blow they found, which is very kind of a Piscean thing, right? Like, it's Saturn is all about the administrative class, and Pisces is drugs. And a lot of people think that, oh, nothing will happen to Hunter Biden and the Biden. I'm not so sure. I am not so sure. I think that story has some legs to it, right? And it may not come out directly as being the story that will force Joe Biden out of the White House, but Karine Jean-Pierre could not handle the hailfire of the questions that were coming at her the other day, right? And then you look at somebody like that, and she's a Leo. And you have to ask yourself how long she's going to be able to put up. I mean, maybe if they continue to pay her well enough and she continues to live, sort of in the lap of luxury, she'll stay there. But at a certain point, she's not going to be able to hang in there, right? At a certain point, it'll be too much. If she cannot wield, so because when she's the press secretary, right, you can wield power. You can totally wield power. You're basically being a mouthpiece for the president. But if she's the press secretary and she doesn't have that power, and as a Leo, if she feels like, the plebes the pool of Virgos connected to journalism that are out there, have more power than she does, or are embarrassing her, or the presidency is going to embarrass her, which it is. She may take an exit, right? She may punch out. So that'll be interesting to watch. I'd have to bring her chart up again to see. I actually called Jen Psaki. I called Psaki's exodus from the White House. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Karine Jean-Pierre, because I don't think she can sit in the fire unless she's being extremely well compensated. What else do we have here? Yeah, so we have Saturn, Jupiter. They're in the sextile. We saw that earlier in the week. Saturn goes all the way back to 0 Pisces. So it's kind of like a reset, right? It's going to go all the way back to 0. And for all you people that have fallen off the wagon, the Saturn retrograde might actually be your friend. Whatever that is, whatever that wagon is, right? It could be your diet, could be your faith. It could be your extracurricular activities, right? But you may have to go back to 0, and that'll be November, but then it starts back up again. But we do have a nice sextile with Jupiter again, the soft underbelly of the market, Saturn retrograde. You're going to find properties that are underwater. You're going to find properties that are in foreclosure. Unfortunately, they're out there, right? So with Jupiter, if you're ready to move or willing to move, you can move on it. So that's another part of what we have here with the sextile, and that's being ready and able to meet some opportunity here, right? And revisiting certain things as well, like going back in time and saying, well, what's important to me? What's important to me, how I'm living, my lifestyle, my beliefs. Maybe we can kind of realign that with Jupiter and Taurus, which is definitely land oriented. And we did a whole thing with Jupiter and Taurus, with the claw that we had a couple of weeks ago. And it's not great for regular Janes and Joes. I looked at those periods, and it's not great for them. It's great for the elites. They seem to do very well with Jupiter in Taurus. I'll tell you a little. I'll give you a little advice on investing, and I'm not sure how much it'll help you, but it's something that back in the day when I was doing my newsletter that I noticed that gold seems to go up during Leo. Imagine that. I started to look at it. Oh, wow, look at this. Oh, look how gold goes up here during the month of late Virgo and into Leo. And then it kind of goes back down again. And I thought that was really interesting. Now, it doesn't go up tremendously. Like if you bought a bar of gold, it's not going to double in price, but it could go up anywhere between 4 to 5%, right? So, this could play out a little bit in the futures market, or if, you wanted to buy like a bunch of gold now, you probably make a profit off of it in August. It's just something I've noticed. It's not huge, right? But there's something about August Leo in gold that does seem to inflate the value a bit, right? So, you can look at there's plenty of tools. You can look at the Comdex stuff and Forex stuff, and you can go back to and back when I was looking at it again. I haven't looked at it in a while. This is back in like 2010 and 2011, where I used to do a newsletter, a paid newsletter. It was like, oh, look at this, right? So we're coming up here on Leo. Mercury is at 27. Cancer, so that means it's moving into Leo, right? 3 days from now, we get Mercury and Leo, and there's just a lot of fire, right? A lot of fire in the sky. Venus will be there. Pallas will be there. Mars will have moved on. We'll have Mercury and Leo, and then the sun. The sun is 13 degrees away, so we're a couple weeks, but the sun will catch up. So Venus will retrograde. Mercury will be there. Not a lot of patience in the air. Just not a lot of patience. And I can't wait to see the fucking TikTok videos that come out during that time, right? The kings and queens of Church's Fried Chicken, right? That's coming to a TikTok channel near you, right? There's a lot. We're moving into a time here where there's a lot of entitlement in the air. A lot of entitlement. You know what I really like? This is kind of funny. I really like the kind of Heyoka that this tribe in was it Connecticut? I think Connecticut or Massachusetts, wherever Ben and Jerry's are. You know, Ben and Jerry's came out on the 4th of July and basically just shat on America and said, yeah, we need to give it back. We need to, we've done so much damage to this country. We need to return the lands to the original people. Well, little did they know that there are about 4 people who represent a tribe that their actual Ben and Jerry's facility is on. They said, oh, really? You feel so strongly about that? We want it. We want it back, right? They put fucking Ben and Jerry's in the spotlight. And I love it. I love it. That was on the 4th of July. And we had Mercury sextiling Uranus, right? A little bit of the trickster there. Like, oh, really? Okay. Well, give it back. Ben, Jerry, that's ours. And no, you can't come up with a new flavor and pacify us. Not going to work. Not going to work. Yep. Your candy corn confection to honor us is not going to work. So I don't think Ben and Jerry are going to put their money where their mouth is. Mars is kind of moving. They make a little donation, I'm sure. Or they'll say, hey, I tell you what, why don't we open a casino here? Let's do that. Let's partner on a casino together. We'll back it. We'll call it Ben and Jerry Land. Or something. No, they wouldn't use their names, would they? They'd use the tribal name. Oh, look who's here. It's about time. Boy, you barely made that. You want to say hi to people? You want to say hi to people? I was talking about having a reservation with a casino on it. What do you think? Is it like that? Jasper's here. Should I hold you up for all the world to see? Huh? There he is. There's the Astro Cat right there. Anyway, what else can we derive from this? The Moon Sun Square. Yeah. So tomorrow that sun will be at 18. We'll still have a Moon Sun Square, and I think the intense and patriotic vibes will still be flowing tomorrow on Monday, right? Like, oh, you're gonna have a lot of people going to work and talk, because a lot of people have been off since the 4th of July. I mean, we had the 4th of July on Wednesday. So I wouldn't be surprised if people took Thursday and Friday off. So this is an interesting chart, very interesting chart, and we have Pluto, Mercury, and that Mercury opposition is coming in. Okay. So I will say this with this Mercury Pluto opposition: be very, very conscious and aware of what you say and how other people will perceive it. Because with a Mercury Pluto opposition, there can be some things that are said that can't be unsaid. Just keep that in mind, right? And we've got about 3 days of Mercury in that opposition with Pluto. So, and that's going to be tricky, right? Because we have this energy here, which is actional. Now, that's the difference, right? The energy is actional versus, right, saying that thing. And Mercury in Cancer is very sensitive. We're down to the final degrees, and that energy is always pretty wonky, right? 27, 28, and 29, there's nothing left. Pluto, the Mercury-Pluto opposition, there's like no more that can be said. There's no more that can be said with the Mercury-Pluto opposition. And I think that has a lot to do with political ramifications, right? It's almost like, somebody goes a bridge too far. It's like, fuck it. You said too much already. Like, you can't unsay what you've just said. So this is a very, very interesting opposition. The stars are potent, man. We got some potent alignments in the sky. All right. So where are we? 8:35, a good hour and a half. Why don't we get into Jim Caviezel's chart? He's part of the show, right? His image is up there. Let me get the one chart that I like here. The one chart we're going to use. All right, so let's do a little background on Mr. Caviezel. And I had never really spent any time with this chart before. And I'm kind of glad we're doing it because he's got a fucking interesting chart. Now, my first experience with Jim Caviziel was when he was in the movie Frequency with Dennis Quaid. I love that movie. To me, that movie hits all these bases, right? It's a love story. It's a father-son story. Baseball's in the movie, right? Like Frequency just checks all those boxes. And in the movie, it's a time travel movie. And I think Jim Caviziel plays, if I'm not mistaken, a fireman because his father was a cop and he didn't want to be a cop. So, but he still wanted to be somebody who was like a first responder. So he's a fireman in that movie. And it's and it's fucking amazing, that movie. It changes timelines. Like it's a really amazing timeline movie. And it happens during a strange aurora borealis effect where essentially Dennis Quaid from the past is able to communicate with a guy who is actually his son from the future. It's very cool. And, we see Caviezel, right? He's got his, oh man, I got the wrong chart. Damn it. I'm sorry. It's not the one I wanted. That's the one I want to show you. It's very similar though. Here it is. That was his draconic chart, which we will get to because it is really interesting. Why? Because it looks a lot like this one. Yeah, so there's Saturn, right? Again, he's dealing with, in that movie Frequency, Saturn's the father. And father is what? A cop in that movie, right? He's a cop. And in Sound of Freedom, right? What is Jim Caviziel? He's a father. And who does he work for? At first, Department of Homeland Security, right? So he plays these roles. He plays these Saturnine roles, with Aries involved. And eventually in Frequency, he does become the father, but he also has his true node in Aries and he has Chiron at 0 Aries, right? So Jim Caviezel's crisis, his chirotic crisis happens at birth. Whatever, I would love to know the story of his birth. How did he come out? Did he have a cord wrapped around him? Was he a forceps birth? Right? Something having to do with his head at the time of his birth. And that's the chirotic crisis. Incarnation is the chirotic crisis at 0 degrees. But he is meant to do what? He's meant to play heroic characters, right? The guy is living out his true node in Aries. And in the 5th house, you're dealing with what? Creativity, acting. He's an actor. The guy's an actor, right? So he's freaking living his chart. And there's his Mars. His Mars is at 3 Virgo. Remember I said that? Mars is at 3 Virgo. So by the end of next week, Jim Caviziel will have a Mars return. And Mars is right on his midheaven, right? Right on his midheaven. And I think we could make a claim that Mars, even though Neptune is in the 1st house, I think Mars is the ruler of his chart, right? It's on the midheaven. He's got the true node in Aries. He's Mars used to be the esoteric ruler of Scorpio. And so when we see his Mars, right, Regulus has moved. It's at 0. So his Mars is conjunct Regulus.
And we'll get into the passion stuff, right? Because there's some weird stuff with the passion and this Jesus character. But of course, with Mars, his Mars is going to be prominent. So whether he's Tim Ballard in Sound of Freedom, or whether he's Dennis Quaid's son, who works at the fire department instead of being a cop in Frequency, he was in the Count of Monte Cristo. I think he was in The Thin Red Line. I mean, he's played a lot of Mars-like characters. Person of Interest, I think, was a TV show that was like really popular, right? Mars. And what's interesting about his Mars is the sacrifice, right? The sacrifice to Neptune. We'll get into the whole Neptune trip with Jim Caviziel in The Passion. So here we go, right? So he'll go through his Saturn return, but if we wanted to throw those nodes in there, right? That south node the north node is right there, right? Just coming off of Vesta. And what's interesting is that this movie was made a while ago. I think it was made during 2018 or something like that. So, even now with the true node and Vesta having to wait, like you have to wait for things with Vesta. Like it happens, right? The movie happened. And with that true node coming in and beginning to conjunct Saturn in this chart, it won't be for, exactly for another couple months. But when it does, it comes right in to, guess what? This yod. Like, so Saturn is a big player in Caviezel's chart. So we have Saturn at 23 and we have Pluto at 23 right over here. We have Saturn at 23 and Neptune at 23. So where did we just see that? We just saw that with Mars, Neptune, and Pluto. So I think Caviezel has a heavy chart, right? Like even though he's Libra and just and he's got the south node there conjunct his sun, so he's supposed to be figuring out how to be diplomatic and how to be fair and all those kinds of Libra things, right? Which I think he does, but he's got a heavy chart. He has a fucking heavy chart. And how many people have played Jesus, and not just Jesus, like Willem Dafoe played Jesus, and kind of walked around and talked to people and partied, and but played Jesus in a state of agony for well over an hour, right? Like not many people have played that role. Let's be honest here. And that's where we see Pluto, like within, I mean, it is right there, 23, and Neptune, 24, 23. And Aries is the symbol of humanity, right? It's the symbol of humanity. And what's interesting is the degree of crucifixion is 29 Pisces. It's the final degree of the zodiacal new year, right? You get to that 29th degree of Pisces and you are on the cross. And I know clients who there's Mark Matheny has his sun at 29 degrees. I'm going to bring Mark on the show. We'll bring him back. Mark is a great guy, and he's always great to talk astrology with. And somebody requested him. I'll bring Mark. Mark is my antipode. He's 29 Pisces, and I'm 29 Virgo, and I love Mark. He knows a shit ton about astrology. And he has, I think, like thousands of charts of people that he saved, and he's way more like organized around than I am. But here's his Chiron at 0 Aries, right? And what is 0 Aries? Aries is the resurrection at 0 degrees. It is the resurrection of the astrological new year. And then right off of it, we have the true node at 9, which is pure will. Pure will, right? And when we get into this idea of will, and I've had this discussion before, this idea of, well, we have free will. I'm not so sure we have free will. But we have this thing called true will. And true will is when we align with God's will. And it feels like we're just doing our thing, right? We're doing what we're supposed to do. And things happen. They happen in ways that don't happen when we're operating outside of our true will. And so this is a big thing for Caviezel. You can see it here, right? You can definitely see it. I think he was also in a football movie too, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure of it. I've got his filmography here, but it's the Yod. Man, it is the Yod. This guy lives a heavy life. He lives a heavy life. He's a Scorpio rising. Of course he is. You can see that intensity in his face. And what's also interesting here is that I think now, okay, this is kind of a weird part of the story. So he married a school teacher, which I don't think is weird. I think it's actually pretty cool that he married a school. He's from Mount Vernon, Washington. Tiny place in Washington. Mount Vernon, Washington. And the weird part is his first movie was called Private Idaho, my own Private Idaho. And it was with Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix. And it's a weird movie for Jim Caviziel to be in, right? It's a very weird movie. It's a Gus Van Sant film, and it's about two young guys that are hustlers, and they hustle in order to get heroin. So what does it mean to be a hustler? It means that they're two young male prostitutes. This is Jim Caviezel's first movie. It's very strange, right? Like this is where he would start, and then eventually he would work up to being, crucified. And even there, you can see this with Scorpio on the ascendant and Neptune in the first house. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Neptune on the ascendant. And here, now we're into, Christ-like territory with Neptune on the ascendant, right? That's how it works. That's how it rolls. If you have Neptune in your first house or you're a Pisces rising, you are fair target to be a scapegoat in your own life. And if you have Neptune in the first or Pisces on your ascendant, you know what I'm talking about. You will get blamed for shit that is not yours. And a lot of times people will also idolize you. That's the other thing with Neptune. They will idolize you. Oh, look at Mary Sue. Her life is just perfect. Look at her. She's got two great kids. And look at her husband comes home at night and they take these wonderful vacations. And oh my God, her skin looks great. And I don't know how she can wear that, but she can pull it off, right? And then 6 months later, fucking Mary Sue's a bitch. She's such a bitch, isn't she? Oh, she's all conceited and stuck up, right? I mean, and Mary Sue probably hasn't changed one iota, right? That's Neptune. That's the price you pay for Neptune on the ascendant. And, what do you do with Neptune on the ascendant? Well, the best thing you do is you let it go, right? You surrender and let it go. It's like sticks and stones may break my bones, but Draymond Green can't hurt me or something, or Jordan Poole can't hurt me, something to that effect, right? So that's what you have to learn how to do with Neptune there. It's like you just surrender and let it go and say, hey, guess what? I forgive you. And what'll happen? You'll eventually you'll turn them around. Like, really? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was so petty. I'm so sorry I said those things about you. I'm so sorry I felt that way about you. And it's like, well, not a big deal. And you have to get there, right? In order to really be able to do that, you have to get there. You have to be able to do it without faking it. So moving down just one notch, he's got the moon in Sagittarius. What's it doing, right? So it's in this really tight trine with Chiron. Who does he play? He plays somebody who rescues children from another country, right? And even the Passion of Christ, supposedly takes place in the Holy Land, right? So there is an international feel to Jim Caviezel's chart, even with Mars coming out of the ninth house and on the ascendant or on the midheaven. And he's got these squares going on. The Mars Moon square, I think Jim Caviezel could have a terrible temper. I think he'd have a terrible temper. Mars Neptune square, it would be the work up to the terrible temper, right? Like, don't fuck with this guy. Don't try to take advantage of this guy with the Neptune Mars square, because then the Mars Moon square comes in and you'll get the brunt of it, right? And then the whole moon in the first house in Sagittarius is somebody who is attempting to live authentically on an emotional level with truth, right? And that's not always easy to do. And there's temptation here. There's temptation with the moon. And it's a wide conjunction, but it's a conjunction nonetheless. And I bet you Jim's got stories from his young days in Hollywood that he probably would like to flush. That's what I think. And there are people who think that he's a member of Opus Dei. I don't really give a fuck if he's a member of Opus Dei or not. Right? Like, compared to what we have in the Vatican now, Opus Dei is like Cub Scouts, honestly. But also with Moon Neptune, like he is going to be very charismatic, right? Very charismatic. And, with the moon in the first house, of course, women will find him attractive. That's the feminine, right? If he went to a place where there were mothers, man, he would not make it out of that place with a shred of clothing on. It's also very interesting about Caviezel is he did a love scene with Jennifer Lopez, and he did it, and he made sure that her top and his top were both on. Like that was the promise to his wife, right? That is the chaste Mars and Virgo. Now, I'm not saying that there could be some weird shit that happened to him in Hollywood. It's Hollywood, right? Hollywood will catch you. But I would say by and large, this is a chaste dude with Mars and Virgo. Right? He's got values, he's got morals, and he's got a Mars Saturn trine, so he has to live up to them. And then he's got all this Virgo, right? He's got a Pluto Jupiter conjunction. Pluto's just going to make all that Virgo and stuff even bigger. So if you're going to get somebody to play Christ, get a guy with a Virgo midheaven, right? And if you're going to put him through suffering, get a guy with Mars in Virgo on the midheaven, and then put him on a cross with Neptune. There you go. And the connection with the bolt of lightning, that's right here. That's like the Sun Uranus conjunction in his chart, right? The bolt of lightning during the filming of the movie. That's fucking crazy. Threw his shoulder out of whack. This guy's got a really interesting chart. Super, super interesting. His relationships, very private. Oh, getting back to his wife. She's a school teacher. I don't think he has any biological children. They adopted 3 kids from China, which again is unusual, right? Like we get into like the home and Sagittarius and another country. I don't think he's got his own biological kids. I could be mistaken about that, but I think that there is some truth to that. His relationships are very secret, very private, right? Again, going back to the movie Private Idaho, Venus and Scorpio, and then there's the inconjunct with Chiron. I'm going to go on record here, and I'm going to say that I think some bad things have happened to Jim Caviziel in his past. I think some bad things have happened to him. I think that there are things that drive him. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Right? I think that he's not just somebody who's being driven through kind of the morality of Virgo, right? There's something else driving Jim Caviziel, and it's Venus and it's Scorpio, and it's the inconjunct right here at 0 with Chiron, right? Something odd, something dark. Now, again, even though it's at 0 and that's the incarnational part, could have been something happened to him in the hospital. Could have been that simple, that weird, right? That easy to detect. Strange shit happens in the hospital with people. I'm telling you, man, strange shit happens. And sometimes sometimes it can be very, very innocuous. Very, very innocuous, but it can be strange. Like my kid had a forceps birth, and he had to be under a heat lamp after he was born. And, it was strange. And it separated him from his mother for, hours. And think about that. You just had a baby. And it's like, where's your baby? Right? Like, where's your baby? It's not there. And I had to be with, and I was the person that was with the baby. And it's kind of weird, right? Like, I'm not, I mean, we're supposed to both be doing that, but in the 12th house is the hospital. So something weird could have gone down in the hospital. It could be that primary, that young, or it could be linked to something later on. But this is strange. There's a secret in Jim Caviezel's past that he's having to deal with here with Chiron. And I think it does fuel him in a lot of ways. He's got Mercury in Libra, Pallas in Libra. He's fair. I think this is a guy that means what he says. He means what he says. He's got a sextile to Mars. He's not going to bullshit you, or he's not going to try to, twist the truth, right? That's not really what he's going to do. He may try to find the language for what he is ultimately trying to express through Chiron, but he's going to tell you the truth. I don't think there's any disconnect there or any cognitive dissonance there. Now, the South Node is going to be coming up on his Mercury. I would assume that there are going to be people that are going to go after Jim Caviezel's past. And I would assume that they're going to come up with stories. Don't be surprised if this happens. Because right now that South Node is right there on his Venus. And I'm already starting to see some of it populate a little bit. So Jim Caviezel is going to have the all-seeing eye in the public space looking directly at him. And, this happened on the set of My Private Idaho, right? Like, I could see that. So now he got crucified in the movie. We might see the crucifixion yet again of Jim Caviezel in real life. That, I don't think that would be out of question here. This is a guy that does believe in fairness. I think what you see is what you get with the dude. Honestly, what you see is what you get. And I'll tell you why. Let's take a look at his draconic chart. So some of you who have had the everything reading have had the draconic chart done as part of your everything reading. And it's not something I get into a lot on this show, but it's a very interesting chart. And the whole idea with the draconic chart is that it is a chart of our soul, right? That's the whole idea behind it. And it's supposed to give us an idea of how we operate at a soul level, and the natal chart being the chart of the personality, and how the two interact, drive, or don't with the other, right? Now, some people would say, well, this is your chart of the cause of incarnation. All right, I'll leave that aside for now. I'll leave that aside for people who believe that they choose their lives. And for now, we'll, just for the sake of an argument here, we'll say that we do that because we want to be empowered for this period of time together instead of just sucked into sort of the Gnostic air pressure tube and chucked into a random life, right? Just for now, we'll just say yes to that. We can have that other discussion or argument during a different show. But let's talk about the sort of the soul's purpose here with the draconic chart. Well, how does it happen? How does it work? How do we get the draconic chart? We put the true node at 0 Aries. Everybody's the true node gets put at 0 Aries. And even if your true node is at 25 Cancer, right? In the draconic chart, everybody's is 0 Aries. Why? It is the start of the astrological cycle. And theoretically, the idea is that you used your will incarnate to come into this body, which would be 0 Aries. So then what happens is we take your true node, depending on where it is. If it's ahead or behind, it's either add or subtract, right? In Caviezel's case, his true node is at 9 Aries. So this true node at 0 Aries is behind it. So we're going to subtract. We're going to subtract 9 degrees from every planet in his chart and every cardinal point, et cetera, right? So when you look at his chart, his true node is at 9, and every draconic chart is at 0. Jim Caviezel's draconic chart is really close to his personal chart. Now, there are Aries people who have their true node at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've read for them, right? It's not always common, but they're there. They're there, right? So once we get through this nodal cycle and we get to 0 Aries at the end of this nodal cycle, if somebody's born around that time, their true node will be the same as the draconic true node. So the idea with that is that the individual and who they are is not that much different at a soul level as they are at a personality or an expression level. It's a rare instance, right? And again, when I said with Caviezel, what you see is what you get is pretty much what you see is what you get. The true node is still in Aries. It's 9 degrees off. He's still a Scorpio rising. There are some differences. Saturn is still in Aries, right? But it is going to be 9 degrees off. So it's not 22. It's 13. Actually, I think it's 21 to 13. His Chiron is different, right? His draconic Chiron is at what? Pisces. And it's the 21st degree of Pisces. So it's that final decan, right? It is the crucifixion decan. And when he's born, guess what happens? It resolves itself into 0 Aries. Isn't that interesting? Like, it would only be more interesting if it was like 29 Pisces and 0 Aries. It's like, Jim, take your shoes off and no, keep your shoes on and go walk across the pool. Okay. But there's something here, right? Like, this is one of the reasons why he's driven to the material. It's that Chiron at 21 Pisces. It is, the sign of theoretically the Christos, even though we know, at least I do, that, Jesus was not born on the 24th of December, the 25th of December. No, he was born on 9/11. And when you get into 9/11 territory, you get into what sign? You get into Virgo, right? So I would assume that 9/11, I have to go back and look at the chart. I think I even have it here. It's going to be right around here, right around Caviezel's sun Uranus. Isn't that interesting? So now we have all this Virgo energy, still amplified. Jupiter, Pluto, their sun Uranus. Look at Mars. Mars is at what? 23 Leo, right? So what does he do? At a soul level, he's playing the king. He's playing the hero. And if we go back and we look at where Mars was on the 5th, 4 days ago, probably a lot closer. In fact, I would say that transiting Mars was conjunct Jim Caviezel's draconic midheaven. How about that? How about that for some astrological math, right? It's like, wow, that's, of course it's interesting. So he's kind of born to play the hero. He's born to play the hero. But Mars and Virgo in his natal chart is the low-key hero, right? He's not playing like, I don't know. He certainly didn't play Kurt Warner, although he's probably pals with Kurt Warner, who's also a Leo. He certainly didn't play, I don't know, Pete Maravich. Like, he doesn't play those guys. He plays more like the everyman. Mars and Virgo, right? Mars and Virgo. Unless, of course, you consider Jesus the everyman. And maybe in some ways he is the everyman. But that's what so it's fascinating how at a soul level, and he was driven to acting. Like, he picked up acting when he was young, and he started acting at a young age. He left for Hollywood at a young age, never really looked back. We still have Scorpio here on the ascendant, but now we have Neptune and the moon together. Right now, what are we talking about? At a soul level, this guy is fixated. He is fixated on this whole connection to mothers and family, right? So in the natal chart, moon in Sagittarius, philosophical here. This is driven. He's driven. He is driven by something that compels him, right, to kind of be engaged in the roles and the work that he's doing. A lot of people accuse him of being a QAnon guy. Whatever. I could give a shit. Right. We live in a world where there are very few people that can be reasonable role models. And I'm not saying this guy is a complete saint. I can tell you he had some shit happen in Hollywood that if it really became public in a big way, people would probably only like him even more in some ways, right? So he's not a saint. I can tell you that. But I don't think he's that far from demonstrating qualities that are, I think, rather demonstrable, good qualities. These are qualities that you want your kid to have, right? Your kid, your son, or your daughter. He's consistently pretty much demonstrated character in the roles that he's played, and I think he does. I think he does. Again, he's not perfect, and the chart is really, again, what you fucking see is what you get. Although the sun goes from Libra to Virgo, so again, he's caught this thing to be of service, right? Like at a soul level, the guy is, I think, fixated on some degree of purity. Just so happens that he's born being a handsome Libra, which probably helps him a lot helped him a lot in Hollywood, right? And here we have Venus and Mercury. So I think he's more untainted here. But something happens in the natal chart. There's something that happens on or around birth. And then I also think that there are some weird relationships he has in his background that he probably doesn't want people to know about. Other than that, I think that this is actually a very, very interesting chart. What you see with Jim is what you get, although I think here at this level, he's probably driven even more. And I think there is an intent of purity here, a purity of intent with the Virgo. I think it's interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. Okay, what is that Sabian symbol for 21 Pisces? Curious. Let's go into the Sabian symbols. This wasn't the first movie like this. George C. Scott was in a movie called Hardcore. And that was back in the 80s. It was written by Paul Schrader, directed by Paul Schrader. And it was about his teenage daughter who goes missing. And he tracks her to San Francisco where he finds her in the porn industry. That movie could have been so much better. So much better. But there's this weird kind of subplot where George C. Scott, who's there to go find his kid and kick some ass, winds up having a relationship with this hooker. Could have been good. Paul Schrader kind of dropped the ball on that. All right, what do we got? 21 Pisces. 21 Pisces. Let's see what that Chiron is. Well, it's interesting. Under the watchful and kind eye of a Chinese servant, a girl fondles a little white lamb. Now, the next symbol over. Now, there are some people that would just say, okay, 21, read 22. The next symbol over, Pisces 22, is a prophet carrying tablets of the new law, is walking down the slopes of Mount Sinai. Isn't that interesting? It's where we get into some very religious kinds of symbols in the Sabian symbol. And they came, by the way, of their own volition. They were not like, okay, Elsie, can you come up with a symbol for 26 Pisces? That was all double blind stuff. So the symbol for 22 Pisces is about innocence. 21 Pisces, innocence. It's also related to 24 Virgo, right? This symbol recalls the one for phase 174, 24 Virgo. And that is his sun sign in the draconic chart is 24 Virgo. Isn't that interesting? Well, let's go to 24 Virgo and see what that says. Mary and her little lamb. So we have Mary and her little lamb, and then the Chinese servant and the girl with the lamb. So it's innocence, right? Both of these symbols are connected to innocence, and he's got them both. He's got the sun at 24. That's it right there. The need to keep a vibrant and pure simplicity at the core of one's being as one meets the many tests of existence. And then the other one's the same thing. Very interesting. And so in the draconic chart, it's kind of a soul mission. He could be here to, to take on the sins of other people through that draconic Chiron, right? I think that would be a pretty good description of that. We're going to close this. I guess we're going to close this. Here, let's set it down. I think I have one more chart to look at, and I think it was the Sound of Freedom chart, and I have it for Caviezel too. I have the two charts together. So he has a funnel chart, and it's all about Saturn. Everything is dependent upon Saturn in his chart. All the contents of the chart resolve themselves in Saturn. Let me see if I can find this damn thing. Here it is. It's right here. So this is the chart with the time of the movie and when it was released with Caviezel's chart. Right here. So you can see the South Node, which is what I was talking about, right? And there's Venus, and there's his Mercury. I'm very wary of this as a transit through his chart, but this is where the planets were on that day. And lo and behold, look, I was right? There's Mars. And so here's his Mars at 3, and then Mars here is at 26. So his draconic Mars is at what, 24, I think. I'm pretty sure it's 24. That's The Sound of Freedom. That's the movie. 24, 25, right? So Mars was 1 degree. Transiting Mars was 1 degree off of his draconic chart. Like, really powerful. I think his draconic midheaven is 26, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just go back here. 25. Still 1 degree off, man. That's epic, right? That's archetypal. That's totally archetypal. So all these planets were moving forward, and that's Caviezel's midheaven. These are all the elements of the movie. Even here, right? Sun, Mercury, 8th house. That's a total 8th house movie. You're going into the underworld. You go into the underworld in places that a lot of people don't go. A lot of creepy places, right? Right there in the 8th house. And he plays a character that goes into the underworld. Astrology. Pretty interesting tool, actually. True Node, Taurus. Remember I talked about that and how this was a project that was going to, took them a while to get to, which is very Vesta. Like, sometimes things take a while with Vesta to unfold. And on that day, check that out. Moon Pluto, freaking Moon Pluto conjunction. Moon at 0 Aquarius, Pluto at 29, right? So again, this is one of those templates for the emotional journey. And in Aquarius, we're dealing with media, right? It's very interesting. It's a very interesting day to launch this movie. And I think most places started to play it at around noon. I just used a noon start time for the movie. What did I use? 2 p.m. 2 p.m. So there's right by the midheaven. I think that was the time that we went to the movie. It was the 2 p.m. showing. This is really interesting, like how, again, we've done this before with movie openings, and I don't think there could have been a better one for Caviezel. and especially with the draconic chart. Although, again, I do think this is something to keep an eye out for in terms of his own personal life, and secrets from the past. Very interesting stuff. And then if we took that out, we could actually see where the chart for the Sound of Freedom, what it looks like, and again, it's there's gonna be, I don't know, with a chart like this, you don't really know where the first showing is on the 4th of July. So I just use 2 p.m. And in this area. But you could see, right? You could see Sun, Mercury, and then Juno. Remember, I was talking all during that time, something new, something new, something new, the birth of something new, right? I think this is a part of it. I think this movie's a part of the story. Whatever you think of it, whatever you think of the people that are behind it, right? Or Tim Ballard, this is something new. And I was talking about this, and even like the trine with Saturn, right? This is a perfect day to launch that movie. And I didn't know it was coming on the 4th of July, but I think this is the birth of something new. I think this is something that will continue no matter what they try to do to Jim Caviziel or Tim Ballard, who I have no birth info on. No matter what they try to do to these people, this was an important moment. The movie's important. I don't think it's a great movie, by the way. I think it's a very good movie. I don't think it's a great movie. But for a movie that has a message, it is a great movie. Because not all message movies can succeed. There are some message. Like, look at all these movies that have all the fucking messaging, right? Like all the SJW bullshit, right? All the BlackRock talking points. As movies, they suck. They suck. The reason why the first Black Panther movie succeeded and was good was because it didn't have an agenda. It didn't have an agenda. It was true to the fucking story, right? If you read the Black Panther comic books like I did as a kid, right? There was Wakanda. It was this kind of, Afro-futuristic sort of world that was hidden. It was pretty fucking cool, right? And it was a story about good and evil, about a guy who, was the good dude and wanted to, to protect the tribe, and you had the evil guy in the tribe. Only after the Black Panther guy died did the whole thing get commodified and became a message movie. And everything that they've done with Marvel has been a message movie. And when you have an overt message movie, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because the idea is, okay, well, we have to get the message in. We got to have this talking point and this talking point and this character. It just doesn't work. And what you have is a rigid polemic that has three-dimensional characters. There's flat, right? I mean, it'd be two-dimensional if they were just flat. But in Sound of Freedom gets very close to that territory. Okay, I'm just being honest. But it doesn't cross over. And the reason it doesn't cross over is because of one character. And it is this guy that they bring in who is a guy, I guess, again, a true story, who was a bad dude. And he had a Saul Paul moment. And he's actually very funny. And he provides both contrast and some comic relief to the movie at times where it's clearly needed, right? So he's, when I saw his character, because up at that point, I'm thinking, God, can we have a joke in here somewhere, right? Can we have a little bit of dark humor in here somewhere? And it finally came. It was like, okay, now we've kind of moved into a bit of a different territory here. And his character continues to kind of provide that through the movie. And his character, that guy's character is really important in a lot of ways. So that's why I think it's a successful movie. because it does have a message. It is soulful. It does have all those Cancerian values of protection and nurturing and all the things that go along with it. But it doesn't fucking hit you over the head with it like a message movie would. It comes really close, I'm telling you. And I am very critical of movies. I'll tell you one of the things that I do like about the movie as well. The cinematography. The cinematography is really, really good. And it has a bit of what's his name? Gilles Villeneuve and Sicario. It has a bit of a Sicario feel to it. So if you like the cinematography on the first two Sicario movies, especially the first one, you'll like it in this one. And it gives it kind of a very dramatic effect at times and very effective. So, hats off to the cinematographer of the film. It adds an element to the movie that I really, from an aesthetic standpoint, I appreciated. Okay, where are we? So we're about 2 hours and 20 minutes in. Okay. Why don't we, if you guys have, hey, you're not supposed to be there. I could play that at the end, couldn't I? Could. All right. If you guys have any questions, somebody brought up questions earlier on. If you have any questions, why don't you go ahead and throw some out there, and I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. Let's see. My friend saw Bobby Kennedy Jr. at the gym yesterday. Said he was nice and friendly. And the dude is cut, man. I think he and Mel Gibson have the same nutritionist, if you know what I mean. I stayed hardcore weight to make this. Well, we're glad you did. Thank you for being here. Forest Fairy Tarot. I'm good. Thank you for asking. I think I'm way back in time. Let me see if I can move up and hear new comments. Let me just go to new comments. Do I think World War III is coming soon? Well, we're already in World War III. We're already there. I think the things that make it look like more of a war. So it goes one of three directions. One, yes, and it starts in Ukraine and Europe and spreads, right? Two, we come to the 11th hour, 59th minute, and 59th second, and somebody comes in and stops it. Whoever that person is, be very wary of that person. Three, no, and it is averted. So I know that it's more than one answer, but I have to account for those three. But we're already there. Come on. We're already there. War is being perpetrated on countries all over the planet, whether it's economic war, whether it's agricultural war, whether it's pharmaceutical war, whether it's outright clashes within the confines of so-called sovereign countries by people who by all rights shouldn't be there, right? All these things are happening. They're all happening now, and they've been happening for a while. So we've been in World War III. We just haven't had our children drafted and conscripted to it. My best friend's daughter works with Bobby Kennedy. How about that? Let's see what else. Any other questions? Deadly weapons for silent wars. Yep. Ukraine child trafficking. Yeah, that's another one, right? Typo of the film with that show is called Trafficked. Okay, there we go. But there was another film called the earlier film Traffic is about drugs and drug trafficking. It's not about humans. It's a good movie though. Traffic is a good movie. It's lightly based on Gary Webb's book called what is it? Not Web of Deceit. What the fuck? I always want to call it Web of Deceit, but it's not that. Should have been that. I always forget Gary Webb's book. Gary Webb was an interesting character. He had 3 kids, man. Gary Webb is no journalism hero. Yes, he was. That's bullshit. That's total bullshit. He totally was a journalism hero. Born August 31st, 1955. He worked for the Cleveland Plain Dealer and the San Jose Mercury News. Let's see. Dark Alliance is the book. And I was, that was during the early days of the internet. And the San Jose Mercury News was putting Gary Webb stories on there. And the guy that Gary Webb was talking with for a lot of this stuff was Freeway Ricky Ross. And Freeway Ricky Ross is actually portrayed by somebody else in the movie Traffic. And Ricky Ross was a young guy from South Central that had all these connections with the coke dealers and the alphabets, and that's what he was doing. He was moving product for these guys, and then he started setting up crack houses. So there's a character in Traffic that is supposed to be him. So yeah, bit of a different movie. Good movie though. Good movie. All right, who else do we have? Excuse my typos. Let's see what do we have. When humans become currency, we are living in dark times of war. Absolutely. Your attention, your emotions, they're all currency. Your thoughts, they're all currency. That's why your social security number matters. In some ways. Show us the Newland. Okay, good. Thank you. Let's play the Newland clip. Thank you for reminding me. I have it right here. Thank you. All right, this is the Newland. It's actually TFI Global. TFI Global. And they have a website, tfiglobalnews.com. So let's play this. Thank you for reminding me. This is the Newland. It's not necessarily about Newland. I think a lot of that has been scrubbed, but this is the news report that talks about it. All right, so let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. I guess that's it, huh? All right, here we go.
Geopolitics has always been a tumultuous roller coaster ride. But hold on to your seats because we are about to take a wild plunge into the abyss. Victoria Nuland's countdown to catastrophe has started, and it is surely not good news for the world. Namaste, and welcome to a fresh new episode of The Global Game with me, Vedika. Let's begin with the video report.
To get a first payment on the next trip.
Hello and welcome to TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical. The war in Ukraine has been a constant source of tension, with moments of fleeting calm shattered by alarming escalations. And lurking in the shadows is the notorious deep state, an enigmatic web of power that allegedly shapes American foreign policy from behind closed doors. Nuland has just dropped a revelation of seismic proportions. In a video conference with Kiev, she boldly declared that World War III could ignite on July 11th. That's right, folks. The countdown to catastrophe has officially begun. World War III on July 11th. Reportedly, at a deleted video conference with Kiev officials, Nuland stated that World War III will effectively begin on July 11th, stating that the US and its partners will fight as long as it takes, 16 years or more. The scheduled date was chosen to coincide with the NATO summit, a one-day meeting in Lithuania. The boldness of Nuland's assertion makes one shudder. She considers the United States and its allies locked in a 16-year clash that never ends, And if that's not enough to make you anxious, take into account the fact that this timeline of new land falls on the same day as the NATO summit. It appears as if she wanted to give the proceedings a little theatrical flair. As the summit approaches, one can't help but wonder what will be on the agenda. It is going to be the protection of Europe from the inevitable backlash of this impending war, or how many fighter jets will make it to Ukraine unscathed, defying the odds and avoiding mid-air disasters. At the center of this geopolitical storm, a question may arise. Who is Victoria Nuland? A very straight-faced answer could be a figure who is apparently more powerful than Biden. A lady as divisive as they come and known for her unwavering support for democratic reforms and closer ties between Ukraine and the West. Nuland has fearlessly challenged the actions of Putin and his allies. From a visible presence during the Euromaidan protests, where she stood alongside the opposition, to leak tapes hinting at her behind-the-scenes influence, Nuland has left an indelible mark on the Ukraine saga. Also, Moscow is a primary target, and this fact cannot be disregarded in the midst of this mayhem. By overthrowing Putin's administration, Nuland hopes to set up a transitional administration headed by Navalny. A startling omission from the plans of Western governments is the absence of peace talks or diplomatic solutions. The American deep state is sending a loud and clear message. Putin must leave, no matter what. This could be the cause of the sudden and significant increase in attacks on Moscow. Moscow recently experienced another erratic drone attack from Ukraine. This fuels even more unease. With the world teetering on the edge of catastrophe, the prospect of nuclear war also looms ominously. As tensions escalate, the possibility of a nuclear exchange becomes an ever-present nightmare. The consequences would be unimaginable, devastating not only for the nations directly involved, but also for the entire world. As the clock ticks down to July 11th, uncertainty grips our hearts. The fate of the world hangs precariously in the balance, and ordinary people like you and me are left to contemplate the terrifying consequences. The fate of our world rests on our collective ability to stand against the reckless path to destruction charted by the deep state. The countdown to catastrophe continues, but we have the power to alter its course. It is up to us to stand firm against the forces that threaten to plunge us into the abyss.
Now, I have no whoops. So those people are Canadian. That is a Canadian channel. And I just thought I'd play that. Well, you requested it, right? So I thought I'd play that for you. And yeah, I mean, so they're going to meet in Lithuania on the 11th. And Nuland said that, right? She actually said that and said, well, we'd be willing to be there for 16 years. How long were they in Afghanistan? Started in 2001 and ended, in 2022. So they were in Afghanistan for 21 years. They wouldn't have any problem being engaged in a 16-year conflict. Of course, Nuland is a neocon, right? And I think ultimately, if you look at her name and transpose it onto Ukraine, they want to make it literally a new land. And that land, of course, would be part of what would be considered to be Greater Israel, right? Basically from Israel straight up all the way through Iraq, Iran, Georgia, and up into Ukraine, right? That is part of the goal here. And it has been mentioned in more than one place. All right, what else we got? What else? Anybody else? Oh, the Crimmies are here. She's a total demon. Let's see. New land. Exactly. Esther Swift got it. Esther Swift totally got it. New land. You're right. Seems like a luge harvesting op. They love fear. You can always, you can always filter it through and not be consumed by the fear. Thanks for turning her off. She did say namaste. We got to give her a little namaste credit. Got to give her a little namaste credit. They want us afraid. I rebuke them all. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. 100%. But she did say that, right? And sometimes these people, you know, they're going to tell you what they're going to do. You know, when AOC started, you know, spouting off on the new Green Deal, I thought this bitch is crazy. There's no fucking way they can do that. All these buildings in this country, and guess what? She was telling the truth. AOC was telling the truth, because we're a lot further along now, unfortunately, after we all thought that she was a freaking idiot. She still is a freaking idiot, but she was telling the truth, right? So sometimes they will tell you exactly what they're going to do. Exactly. Let's see. Munitions are low. Cluster munitions are at the bottom. Yep. 16 years seems oddly specific. What's the gematria on that? I don't know. I usually don't run gematria, but we could do 16 years. 10 years is 2033. So 2039. 2039 brings them to the end of the 2030 decade, right? So it brings them to the end of the 2030 decade, 2040. Yep. Let's see. Anybody else? China is prepared for war as well. 16 is the tower card. Nice one, Claire. Good. Suddenly the cluster bombs are not a war crime when our friends use them. Let me put that up there, user 13. Right? Oh yeah, depleted uranium is good too when our friends use them as well. 16 years is also how long Pluto is in Cap. Good to see you, Ani. Sometimes it depends. It depends on the Pluto cycle. Pluto is one of those cycles that's irregular. Neptune is a 15-year cycle. So it's a bit closer to a Neptune cycle. Neptune is definitely chronologically 15. Is there Bill Gates might already be down. Who knows who this character is? I have no clue. Gone squatching. They wormed their way into our government long ago. Their privately owned Federal Reserve and IRS collection agency funded the takeover of Russia and has spread their influence throughout the world. Couldn't argue with that at all. Perfectly stated. 100%. Anybody else? Let's see. You guys are sharp. Very, very sharp. 7-11 is the chart. Yeah, I kind of looked at that, I think. I kind of looked at that. Let me see. Where's gone Sasquatchin? Isn't 2040 when the flipped majority minority happens in the U.S.? Could be. At least that's what they project. I don't believe the numbers. I think that we're probably a lot closer to that than not. Let's see what Ashanti says. I noticed recently that many politicians' wives write romance novels. For example, Kristen Feehan is a Canadian politician wife and a best. Really, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Do you think that they write them or that they're ghostwritten? We are 50% Hispanic in Texas now. In Texas. Yeah, you know, it's some of my favorite people, I got to say. I like some of my favorite people. I love going to Jalisco Tequila restaurant here in town, and they like me. Some of my favorite peeps. I wondered if the derailing that occurred was, I think so. But part of the derailing is also part of the weird planned obsolescence. I think that in and of itself is part of the plan. Here we go. Another user 13 comment. The Ukes were allegedly using white phosphorus on the Donbas. Doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me. Claire is the hermit in the moon. Oh, I like that. Dr. Laura Wilson is in the house. What's going on, Dr. Laura? Remember Dr. Laura? She was a first-class bitch. But you know what? She wasn't wrong with a lot of stuff. Dr. Laura was not wrong. The Crimmies are in the house. Good to see the Crimmies. Can I critique the song I Like to Rock by April Wine? April Wine is an underrated band. I will say that. Lana says, I will tell you when I saw that my custody case number, my child, social security number, what did she say? Were almost identical right there. I knew. Ooh. Ooh. Knight of Cups. This is the part. This is the World War III part that I agree with here. The derailments, plane crashing, processing centers, derailments, planes crashing, and processing centers. The immigration issue at the border are all designed to weaken the infrastructure for attack. Yep, 100%. 100%. You guys are on it. I think we're good. Are we good? Anybody else? Anybody else? Any other questions, comments before we sign off here? Claire, they want to escape their boring husbands. It's like the Middle Ages, or it's like the Crusades, right? All their husbands went off to go slaughter the infidels, and they left the poets and the eunuchs behind to write all those juicy romance tales. Anybody else? Blissly, hey Blissly. No questions. All right. Christine Moe's in the house. Where have you been, Christine? You've been here all night? Good to see you. Okay, I think we're good. I know Dr. Laura was a total bitch, but you know what though? You go back and listen to what she had to say. She's probably more right than she wasn't. Although Dr. Laura was one of those people who was do as I say, not as I do. Dr. Laura was a little racy on the side. Wasn't always as morally correct as she would tell her callers to be. We'll put it that way. All right. I think we're good. Can I talk about the boosters coming out in the fall? Not with a degree of what's what I'm looking for, deep understanding that I would like to. So I won't bring it up, but I'll look into it. I'll definitely look into it. Okay. Before we go, if you have not helped out with Mark and Jillian Malone, let me just bring that back here front and center, and what Jill and Mark are going through. We had Mark on the show on Friday. It was a great interview. And I don't know where she is right now, because it's a really aggressive and fast-moving cancer. But I'm just going to put this up here so you guys can hold on a sec. Get rid of this. So you guys can eyeball it one more time. And I'll put the link here. They're up to $27,000, which is good. I think we started the Friday show at about maybe 25. And I know the Crimmies. I saw the Crimmies in here. So you guys have been great, helping out. And Mark, you're all that a man, husband, father, and human aspires to be. Absolutely. So if you guys wanted to, you can send a prayer. You could share the link. You can throw them a couple bucks. Jill's in stage 4 cancer with her breast. It's spreading, and they're at a pretty sophisticated last chance treatment center in Arizona. So I just wanted to bring that up again because we got a pretty good Sunday night crowd. Okay, that's it. We'll be back Tuesday, 15 minutes of flame. And if you're on the newsletter list, you'll be getting an update within the next 48 hours about the event, where to sign up, how much to sign up for, and then I'll start talking about it on Tuesday. Okay, that's it. Why don't we play the video? We'll get out of here. Thanks for being here. Take good care. We'll see you with this show next week. Bye for now.